Hi, my name is Mike Zuckerman. In this webinar, I'm going to cover data integration technologies, architectures, and differentiation. I'm going to share a bit of the history of the market, the size of the market, and give you a sense of how to frame your requirements against the best tool sets that will work for you. Qplix is a data integration data management company. We do all the things you'd expect to support building out business intelligence, loading the data warehouse, and certainly connecting between two-to-many sources for purposes of data alignment. Data alignment can be customer data, can be product data, HR, vendor data, and can scale all the way to perhaps virtual master data management. Important to our customers are the things that differentiate us and make us different. Why, in a stable, mature market, even a sleepy market, would you want to bring in a new technology? The reason is because you can save a lot of money for your organization, reduce your risk, and greatly shorten deployment time. First thing about Qplix is that data quality and the implementation of data governance rules are built into the system. Data quality without support in your data integration environment will leave you with all sorts of problems after your data integration vendor's done. We step up and we stand tall to support data quality implementations both prior to the integration phase, during the integration phase, and in production. It's a big difference. Two, we have unique technology based on data virtualization, which changes the economic paradigm for you and your organization. We will reduce your implementation time 50, 75, 80, 90%, depending on what you're doing, and this savings will be available to you in the short term. The savings comes with a reduction in risk, and the saving comes with an enhanced speed to implementation. The more sources you want to integrate and bring into your data warehouse, the more money we're going to save you. On top of this, the benefits would be significant, but we add even more. We add the benefit of a NoSQL environment. Our object dashboard lets you bring in relational, object, XML, even NoSQL applications, and integrate the data without any programming and without any SQL. Now you have a playing field in which your business users can participate and provide full guidance for the implementation. Data stewards, master data managers, system architects, all can put their hands deep in the system without programming. Most of all, ETL programmers, very bright people that have to implement legacy technologies like ETL today, very much appreciate this technology and understand the advantages it provides. The savings that you can get as an experienced ETL programmer using a technology like ours is perhaps on the order of magnitude of 3 to 1, 4 to 1, or even 5 to 1. This is one continuum. We view any single instance of integration as an important part of the enterprise plan, as I would view any instance of master data management or virtual master data management. That's a really important distinction to make. There are not isolated instances of standalone code, but one architecture and one network that can bring it all together. One continuum, one platform. It's a difference in philosophy that building a truly integrated system allows us to represent to our customers and our prospects. Everything you see here on this page represents fundamentally from virtual master data management on up one code base. QCloud is our public cloud product. QCloud is the first data management and data integration cloud. We provide that in many forms for our customers. Suppose you want a cloud deployment for flexibility and low cost, but you really don't want to deal with all the worries associated with security, or you have some compliance issues. We'll build you a single instance cloud just for your organization. So QCloud is both deployable broadly yet flexible. Virtual Data Viewer, Cloud ETL, Virtual ETL, and Virtual Data Manager are no more nor less than the same code base as you can license and deploy within your organization. Within your organization means on-premise in your data centers or outsourced in another data center that you arrange. And finally, Virtual Master Data Management, an unannounced product where we're working with pilot sites and we're bringing together technology to produce dramatic cost reductions for companies deploying legacy master data management on a global scale. The problem we solve is the state of the market for data integration. It is how to connect all these disparate islands and how to build the bridges that make that work. Today, the rate at which these applications are being bridged is accelerating, yet the tool set that customers have is still probably the same that they had 5 years ago. You have cloud apps on the upper left. They're object-oriented. They don't live in your data centers necessarily. You have NoSQL apps, which have very different data structures, but you are compelled to bring these apps in because of their performance and scale. And you have the legacy relational apps and large search appliances that are already in your enterprise solving problems for you today. And you need to move data between these applications because you need to have a consistent view of your customers, your employees, your vendors, and many other components of information that, when aligned, produce strong return on investment for your organization and competitive advantage. But as the number of applications grows, building these bridges becomes more and more difficult. The market opportunity really helps you as a customer understand where you are. Today, over the past year, there have been several projections for the size of this market. Forrester frames the market as information as a service and sees tremendous growth, perhaps up to 40% for this market. Gartner, perhaps more conservative, sees the market for data integration tools and frames it in their quadrant at $1.5 billion, but breaks out the market for example, data quality as a separate market at a little over $750 million today, and growing. And IDC sees the market as very substantial also. So in our mind, when you take all of these pieces together and you add master data management, which is the high end of data integration, and you add data quality, we're dealing with a market today which is over $5 billion. So you as a customer are buying products and services in a pool of $5 billion that will be spent this year by all of your peer companies and competitors. That means that the vendor should offer competitive solutions for you. You would think that in a broad market like this, you would have the opportunity to find strong cost savings. But in fact, in data integration, it's really not the case. The data integration market has been turned upside down by vendors that build these products to drive a professional services business. The business model for the big players is all about professional services. They sell you a tool for $10, and then they hope to get $10, $20, $50, $100 in services to go with that $10 tool. The technology that some vendors are bringing to market turns that model upside down and brings it back to the classic software deployment model, where the advances in software should bring large advances in cost savings, deployment time, and risk. Note that from Forrester's perspective, as of June 2011, integration by ETL creates data quality problems and delays information delivery. Note Gartner's point that more and more integration will move to the cloud, certainly integration platform as a service, and they see perhaps over 30% of all large and mid-sized organizations using one or more iPaaS platforms. That says that integration in the cloud is here to stay. Today, I can say that I've been in so many meetings with large enterprise accounts that have told me we will never bring a cloud product into this organization. And then a year or two later, I've been back in those same accounts, and lo and behold, Salesforce.com has placed a foothold in one of their divisions. NetSuite, ERP in the cloud, is following in the same footsteps successfully. And the bottom line is that there are technology means to solve the compliance issues and the other security problems that have plagued some of the large companies, and now they can take advantage of applications like Salesforce and NetSuite and more. That trend will continue to evolve. Along with that trend will come convergence between data quality and convergence between data integration and the mid-range towards master data management. Overall, cloud integration and object integration has changed the mix. The biggest reason for the disruption and the advances in new tools has been the emergence of Salesforce and NetSuite. And this has created compelling reasons to change the data integration paradigm. Salesforce, to deploy it probably 1 and 2 times, requires an integration footprint. And that integration footprint is not well served by the current tool set. When an innovative company comes along, if they're purchased by a large existing vendor, that market for deployment is turned once again to professional services, and that does not serve the benefit ultimately of the end user customer, who now has to pay more and then get less. Now, the history of data integration spans a long field, perhaps left with the bodies of different product instantiations. Certainly enterprise application integration, mostly wrapped around real-time transaction for ACID transactions, requires that the applications change, requires custom code and connectors between apps, and requires database triggers get inserted every step of the way. It's highly invasive, it's customized, it's designed to support a transactional environment, and while it's evolved over the years, fundamentally, the basic deployment models are much the same. Enterprise information integration has mostly failed in the market, and the vendors that were left repositioned themselves as early data virtualization vendors and moved off into the load the data warehouse segment of the market. EII, while the early data virtualization vendors may applaud the technology, fundamentally was a failure because it tried to compete with ETL, and ETL was far more successful at moving the big files that needed to get moved. Fundamentally, when the sun came up in the morning, most of the customers needed to move files and needed to move them with high speed and didn't get the benefits that EII offered through its approach. So ETL emerged from the data warehouse world and started to subsume other integration applications. Ultimately, though, ETL is still the same technology it was 20 years ago. It's grown some wrappers, it's grown some GUI front ends, but fundamentally it's a very old technology, it's programmatic, it's risk prone, and it's moving one byte at a time. And this kind of technology is not able to scale easily to the cloud world at all, and has really sort of hit the end of the rope for its useful life. Data virtualization as a new underlying technology has spawned the persistent metadata server, and now the multi-point integration that creates a new opportunity for customers. We'll talk more about that later, but more customers are integrating multi-point and less customers are integrating point-to-point. MDM, as you know, the high end of data integration, suffered a near-death experience. Many of the projections were revised, but Gartner sees it growing again at double-digit percentages from 2009 for the next several years, and that's a good thing for everyone. We believe that virtual master data management will change the paradigm, will reduce the ROI from 20-something months down to to an ROI that lives in the low teens, will cut the cost of deployment substantially, and will lower the risk for organizations that were previously doing big top-down, massive deployments. So VMDM promises many sea changes for the industry, and as the pilots get out there, I think the industry will pick up on it very quickly. Part of what you have to think about when you look at the market is you really have to think about, what are you doing? There's really three classes of integration. One is it's real time. You've got commits. You've got an ACID transaction. It's got to happen within a sub-second window or a few seconds. You've got real-time or near-time non-transactional, where you might have to commit that the data will be moved within seconds to minutes. These are non-triggered implementations where perhaps you might read an index to see if a field changed, and if it did, go and implement your transform rules. And the third tier is, untriggered in any way, shape, or form, but merely scheduled. The bulk of the customer integrations out there today are still only operating at the third tier, so sometime at 1 a.m. the data is harmonized to a batch ETL operation. This doesn't deliver the optimal business benefit and doesn't give you the ability to have a mostly correct snapshot of your data across your operational systems. So most of the customers today are either doing real-time transactional updates or near-time non-transactional updates, and that's where the market is for the most part. If you looked at the technology curve and you talk to all the analysts, I have a list of about 14 analysts that we've spoken with, and perhaps you look at the latest study from Idealnet, what you'll find is that 90% of the market is still using first-generation technology from the early days of the data warehouse. When the first data warehouses rolled out and ETL was invented, it was an exciting and new thing. That's still 90% of the market space today. Unbelievably, but true. Around 2000, ETL grew some GUI interfaces, changed its mode of deployment, started to use templates, and some of these have even been deployed in clouds. But fundamentally, even in those clouds, they have a 20-year-old technology in that 1-year-old cloud. At light speed, the internet evolved. At light speed, mobility came to pass. I'm looking at my two iPhones, and even a year ago, my BlackBerry. Yet in data integration, people were still working with the old rotary dial phone. That's where the technology's been. And so that business model, driven by professional services, goaded the vendors to maintain the status quo. And ultimately, that is to the detriment of the customers out there, because that status quo now leaves burgeoning organizations with multiple connectivity points that are unmanageable, unscalable, and perhaps unrepeatable as the next integrations come along. The third generation of technology is really taking data virtualization technology and building out a persistent metadata server. Persistent metadata servers don't cache hardly anything. Persistent metadata servers know where the data is and at the right time direct the movement, whether for harmonization or for virtualization. And this is a big sea change. Persistent metadata servers can be up to 1,000 times faster than a database engine because they're not holding the data. They're just holding information about the data and orchestrating the movement of that data when it's time to do so. Persistent metadata servers provide a key piece of infrastructure for the organization. They let you do something that you could not do before. I remember waking up several years back when I ran an R&D organization and finding a new invention called the application server. I said this was wonderful, but so what? I went back to sleep. 2 to 3 years later, I woke up and I had to buy 3 instances of an application server because fundamentally application servers provided a gap that was missing in operating system environments and application deployment environments as the web came along. The persistent metadata server is exactly the same way. You're going to see persistent metadata servers in many forms to serve data integration, data virtualization, building out the data warehouse, and you will see this as a cornerstone of your IT infrastructure over the next few years. It's coming on, it's accelerating the rate of deployment, and fundamentally it will happen because persistent metadata servers offer capabilities that you cannot get from any other technology set. They provide high performance, they do it at low cost, and they lower your risk. It's very, very important. The automation that comes with a persistent metadata server takes many processes that you'd have to code manually with first and second generation and brings them to you on an automated platform. It extends itself to the business users because there's no programming involved, and without SQL, all things become possible, an equal playing field for all your apps regardless of the data structures underneath. The future vision for NGen, as we call our platform and as we see the enterprise move, really is the unified field theory for data integration. It's the belief that you can sit in one place and across your enterprise see the state of all your data integration, performance, error handling, data quality, compliance, audit, state, and roll back, roll forward. This is the vision that Tivoli had just for server management. And yet the state today that the largest integration vendors bring you is just mountains of ETL and disparate data quality systems and no common view of how all of this works. And that's not what you need to run the enterprise of the future. When you have all of these applications integrated, you're going to need a way to understand exactly what's happening. When your CFO says, what happened in these 4 instances that we have of SAP? How many data records came in and came out on July the 10th? I need to know exactly what happened because we've got a problem in this source system and it could cause $1 million worth of liability to the company. Those are the questions you cannot answer easily, if at all, with ETL-based deployment. And those are the answers that the NGen platform will provide for your organization. Looking at history again a little more closely, EAI was an application level view of the world, and this software has to dig into the specific applications to build the hooks that you need for transactional deployment. EAI ties absolutely to the application systems and the underlying data structures and usually uses hard-coded triggers in the databases to make sure that various updates are done. EAI can be implemented at several levels. You could certainly do it just in the application code, but we're seeing more and more people that are tying themselves to database triggers. EAI is expensive to deploy, expensive to use, it's real time, it's usually ACID compliant, it is not easily maintained as vendor application revision levels change. You have to go into your code base. It doesn't extend well to the cloud, if at all. It is custom hard-coded application changes and very fancy and high-performance tool sets. It is not business user level deployment, and it is designed to support transactional flow. That's what you need to remember. Part of EAI starts to cross over into the domain of screen scraping. The notion that you could pull data off screens in pieces and recollect those pieces for user integration at a different point in the system. And EII started to pick up the same functionality, but perhaps without the invasive and difficult coding required by EAI. So in the final analysis, EAI, transactional, difficult to deploy, database invasive, not easily managed to the releases of vendor software, sophisticated integration, and very traditional middleware, plumbing. Enterprise Service Bus is another opportunity for application level integration, but again, very high performance platform, proprietary APIs, and very specific needs that you have to solve in your organization. ETL is the workhorse for file level transfer. We talked about it earlier, moving big files from point A to point B. It's about bulk data movement, it's about loading the data warehouse, but it's the last tool you should use to connect your Salesforce or your NetSuite with your other enterprise apps like SAP. It is absolutely the wrong thing to do. It's an ancient legacy technology, and the fact that you have bright people on your teams whose hands are tied using these ancient tools and they still get good results means that you should applaud their efforts, because this is not easy stuff to work with. Every byte must be programmed, and this tool set is ancient. It should be pulled out of your organization, other than for very big bulk trial transfers. This is all about bulk, and the onus is on you to do everything. If you look at the data integration paradigm, IEEE did a seminal study on data integration, and they found that roughly 40% of all the effort was just getting hold of, for each data source, the schema, the organization of the data, getting the knowledge from the user that they needed for that app, understanding the particulars of the API, and then understanding the semantics of how you map these together. I have 2 customer records in 2 systems, and when the address is corrected in one, I want it in the other. But there are multiple address fields. There's a mailing field, there's a billing field, there's a customer support site number 1 field and site number 2 field. And pulling all this together using legacy implementation takes 40% of your time. With applications like data virtualization, this percentage is more than cut in half. And these are the things you need to know about that will save time for your organization and produce financial benefits for your team. ETL sometimes brings in data quality processes and can generally eliminate duplicate data, but once again is a very batch-oriented process. You know, it's not flexible, it's designed for 2 points, it's a pipe, and if you're moving things down one pipe and you're moving them in bulk, that's where it fits well. Most ETL today supports the modern standards you need, like JDBC and ODBC. Some have web services. Not all support SOA programming techniques, but most do. And again, you're managing the bit by bit, byte by byte movement of data. Now, a better way to look at this, I call it, they say extract, transform, and load. I had one customer describe it to me as code, load, and explode, right? Here you are, and you have to connect more than 2 sources, several sources. So you start to lay pipe. ETL is from point A to point B. You've got to lay another pipe and another pipe and another pipe, and every single instance of this pipe has to be managed. Some of the vendors, to support master data management, packaged this up and called it, wow, this is a master data management framework with a hub. So now the word hub shows up, and it suggests that somehow this will magically come together better and more simply. Nothing could be further from the truth. You're just managing a bunch of isolated instances in one software environment, and whether that's better or worse for you, only time will tell. Some customers on Wall Street have gone so far as to put a data mart in the middle and move the data from one source into the data mart and then move it back out. So they built the hub and spoke, or the star configuration that we offer with a persistent metadata server, but they've manually coded it and loaded it and hopefully not exploded it to get that data moving in and out. That implementation, which I've seen more than once on Wall Street, is state of the art. People are proud of those implementations, yet they had to build out all this infrastructure, debug so much, and then manage this thing statefully as each vendor's software component on any end of this and any end of the spoke was upgraded. That's further from the truth that you need to be with a data virtualization system where all of that is taken care of for you. So ETL is about point A to point B, laying pipe, and moving bulk files, and the last thing you want to do is tackle a picture like the one in front of you. It's the problem with master data management. It's the reason why legacy master data management is so difficult, is that they have to use multiple ETL links to make it all work. Now, not only has Wall Street tackled this successfully, but also healthcare providers are another segment of the market, in life sciences, where people have built out large and unnatural frameworks for MDM deployment or multiple ETL deployment. Putting that data mart in the middle, boy, that's a lot of work for you, and it's unnecessary. But ultimately you have to find a better way. You have to have experience with it, and as you get to know new technologies like data virtualization, you'll have the comfort to go forward and try these architectures out in your organization. ETL paradigm for development is so tough. The metadata, the names of the columns and fields, are somewhere else, and if you had them, half the time they're cryptic. I remember going into SAP once and looking for the field name for an address and finding the word Strasse in German for street. And that's probably okay, but if you have to do data integration, you need more than that, right? You need tools, you need semantic alignment, you need not templates, but you need an automated system to help you put the right pieces in the right places and connect them to the other pieces. And that's what you don't get. Everything you have to do is explicitly coded. You have to manage all of the work to integrate with proprietary APIs. Think about SAP. SAP has a multitude of variation in their SAP architecture, and that variation reflects itself in different API structures. R3 is not the same as XYZ release, and I think the big customers out there certainly understand this. You get into this complex gobbledygook of UI work where people say, well, there's no coding. If you're not a programmer and you don't understand rocket science, you're not going to easily deploy ETL. ETL is harder than application program development. You're managing the data infrastructures and permissions between two different databases, and you're doing it a byte at a time with full knowledge of both applications, and you have to support and respect the APIs of those applications. It's very difficult to do, it's not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart. Cloud integration was kind of a new turn. We had some interesting and innovative vendors that brought some products to market, certainly not data virtualization based, but innovative nonetheless. And the second they started to make some headway, chasing the wind in the sails brought by Salesforce and others, forcing a lot of re-architecture in the market, the big professional services firms said, whoa, I want to get hold of those vendors. I want that services business. And so lo and behold, they got hold of those vendors, the innovation started to slow, and the services costs started to increase, go up by tens to hundreds of dollars per hour, because the business model for this innovative stuff was really wrapped around professional services once these customers were acquired and these companies were acquired. So we didn't get too far with ETL wrappers. They were an improvement, but the two companies that did that were subsumed by other companies, and now pretty much there's no one left in the market doing those kinds of things. EII, of course, has disappeared. Some of the early data virtualization vendors, are old EII vendors, and they have a nice small niche working with some BI applications. So we're happy to see those customers benefit. EII, in the context of virtual mashups, still provides a lot of utility, and its best foot forward is certainly in loading the data warehouse and being able to build out new tables from multiple sources. Because EII is so relational centric, it really did not work well with objects. There were interfaces cobbled on to make that work, but the whole EII market and the early data virtualization vendors and the whole data federation story is designed for relational databases. And every time your organization wants to bring in an instance of Cassandra or wants to hook to Salesforce in the cloud, the only way to do that is to cobble an interface on top of these old systems, which doesn't optimize performance, slows you down, and doesn't bring the best technology to bear on solving the problems you have. Finally, EII, like anything else in early data virtualization, is just another software instance. There's some metadata involved. It's one to some, but in the final analysis, it's not really a persistent metadata server. It's an instance of software, and it's a piece of middleware. People will say that right in their websites. We're middleware, and that's a very basic and fundamental form of deployment. It doesn't give you the most power to leverage your team, and it doesn't give you the benefits and capabilities that are available in the market today in more powerful server-based products. Virtual is key, though. In EII, the notion of virtualization sprang forth, and this begat that data virtualization market. The notion that what you see doesn't have to be in the system in front of you, that it can be virtually extended through metadata structures. And that was an important contribution. So, the pioneers, have their place in history. The wagon trains had to roll, but today we're driving fast cars and we're flying jets. And those pioneers, though respected and beloved for their early contributions, really don't have the tools or technology to serve the market anymore. Data virtualization is a new technology for data integration, started with federalized views in a relational paradigm, but started to scale over time and grow features that brought new benefits to customers they had not seen before. Even the early templates and wire diagrams were much, much better than those they could find with early ETL product capabilities, but they still required, a comprehensive knowledge on the part of the programmer, in the area of SQL, in the area of programming, the area of how each API works in every source application, and put the responsibility on them for clocking every bit and byte out of the system. That didn't change. So templates were there, but fundamentally, they're not really that reusable. The reality is you've got to lay your pipe, from A to B and from B to C, and you've got to do it over and over again. And so even the early data virtualization products, while they brought you forward, didn't bring you further forward enough to give you the full benefit. Advanced data virtualization has come from a different place. It's based upon a persistent metadata server. All of the data sources you have, if you have 8 different applications, you can see all of their data structures and actually look at all of the data if you want, record by record, object by object in one place. We don't use a relational dash, we have an object dash. It's a big change. Federation is the term that the legacy market for data virtualization speaks to, but the term we like to use is globalization. Federalization is there are 5 things, and you can move them over there. Globalization is there are 5 things, and you can see them virtually together right now, even though they're not moved before you move them. It's a different way of looking at things. Presentation is transforming the data, whether it be New York in one system equals n.y. in another, or the date formats have to change, or we have to concatenate first name and last name because in this system the fields are separate, but in this system it's one field. And all of that stuff is brought to a high level of automation and a very fast ease of deployment in an advanced data virtualization system. There's really no technology like this. If you get this in the hands of your ETL teams, people are going to see an immediate benefit, and they're going to wonder why they haven't been using the technology earlier, why they spent so much time using legacy ETL. This is new software infrastructure. It will show up in our data centers in many forms. And the best part about our version is that it's configurable, it's checkbox driven, and the transforms are driven by Excel-like formulas. There's no programming. And I can't imagine a bigger benefit than that for your user community. Now, as a practical matter, let's be real here. Most implementations are certainly done by programmers and IT infrastructure, but I think the difference is that now you have a level playing field with which you can partner with your business users. You can sit down. No one can do that with ETL. ETL is mostly gobbledygook, it's technology, and it's best used solely by technology personnel, but advanced data virtualization gives you a different kind of playing field, and that playing field makes it easier for everybody to get successful. Data virtualization really takes the complexity out of everything and gives you a very simple architecture to tie things together. You're not laying pipes. As you bring in an application, you virtualize it once and then you can integrate it many. Instead of laying 6 pipes into your SAP app to connect it to a bunch of other applications. You've got one pipe into your SAP app that can service the needs of all your different integrations and do it in a much more auditable, much more compliant, much more visible, and white box technology way. It's a very, very big change. System architects will look at this and understand immediately why it's compelling for them and for the teams to get their hands on this kind of technology deployment. Data virtualization is automated in that it discovers the structure of data for you. You give it the security permissions, it goes out and it reaches into these sources and it grabs the structure of the data and presents it back. Because it doesn't hold the data, the speed and the performance is vastly superior to that of a database engine where everything's got to be loaded and cached. So it's able to do things for you across a broad swath of data, across hundreds of thousands of rows of data that you can't do with your database engines themselves. Everything in advanced data virtualization, the dash, is converted to objects. Whether it's relational, whether it's already objects in the cloud, whether it's XML, even CVS, a spreadsheet, whatever it is. And this creates an equal playing field for you to work with these entities to perform integration. There's no wire diagrams, there's no spaghetti line connections, there's no cumbersome templates, there's no legacy relational front ends for you to look at. And while most of what you may do, you'll say, well, we do so much that's relational today, but it's changing every week. And if you lock yourself into these legacy tools, you're going to be stuck with the legacy paradigm. And then one day you're going to be forced to switch at much greater cost and expense. Today you can go out and get a tool that's built around an object framework, and now whatever your organization uses, you're ready, you're flexible, and your speed to implement will be much faster. One of the things about advanced data virtualization is the visibility to the system. Because it's not programmatic, because it's rule-driven, the rules come from really two places. One, the business rules that drive the organization, which are business-driven, and then we segregate out data governance rules as a special use case, both for master data management and for other forms of integration. These rules directly translate into sets of transforms, and these transforms provide the logic that drive the integration. All the things that you'd have to do painfully and explicitly in ETL flow much more gracefully from a rules-driven implementation using advanced data virtualization. Advanced data virtualization can fit into your data center. It can be hosted on VMware, ESX, ESXi, and when Oracle moves to their new environment, we'll certainly be ready to support it. Microsoft also has activities that are definitely worth support and will be there for it. On the other hand, you can get advanced data virtualization in QCloud. It's easy to deploy. We're not the only vendor that's bringing these products to market. And so, given Gartner's projections about iPaaS, integration platform as a service, over 30% of the market, will be touching these things. It behooves you to find out what you can get and what the price points are. Our list price points to integrate two sources in the cloud are perhaps $500 a month at list price, $1,000 a month for 3 sources. And basically a blade or a connection point is $500 to $1,000 depending upon what you're doing. This is much lower cost than anything else you can do. And our VARs and some of our direct sales will package in the integration and data quality for you up front. It's just a very different way of doing things, and because of the ease of implementation, the price points can become very compelling. In the final analysis, the reason to do this is we're going to reduce the professional services costs by well over 2/3. We're going to reduce the risk, and we're going to speed deployment. That's the way it is with any new technology. It's got to be compelling. And the WIFM, the what's in it for me, is all about cost savings and data mobility. So data virtualization now opens up the world. It gets you into these different data structures more easily. The analysts have certainly looked at it. The internet's full of information about it. But in the final analysis, most of the data virtualization vendors are using it for data warehouse loading, and for data integration. There are also many, many options that most customers haven't explored. This is a new and disruptive architecture for data integration. No other vendor can provide the things that advanced data virtualization can provide. And I get one question, which is, why hasn't XYZ or ABC vendor done this? The two big legacy vendors. And the reason is that it would disrupt their business. It would destroy their existing business wrapped around professional services, wrapped around recurring fees from selling their their Power Monster Center, so that they can renew all their ETL licenses. That's just human nature, right? When the digital camera came along, did the people that made film rush to build and deploy digital cameras? No, not exactly. They were preserving their film business. And it's the same here. All the big companies that sell you services and that sell ETL products are interested in that services model, and perhaps in the open source world even more. So that's why you have to break the shackles yourself and find a new technology that will gain you advantage and get it into your organization, because they won't do it for you. Here you can see pieces of the UI. We have customers like major banks that are implementing applications in social media like Facebook using advanced data virtualization. Nothing's like that out there on the legacy side with SQL, and if it is, it doesn't work very well. This is the new world, and you have to step into it to gain the advantage and the benefit. Business users can sit down and start to align fields, start to make sense of data, and to do the work that they need to get complex business applications to align simply and easily. And using the automated tools inside data virtualization, this is something you can do in hours to days as opposed to weeks and months. Application software blades are part of the special sauce for data virtualization. They wrap to each application and they obfuscate away everything that would create work for you in that API. If you were a programmer coding it with ETL, yes, you'd get a connector, but that connector would still be about 10% basic alignment of data and 90% heavy-duty lifting on your part. Application software blades are far more powerful. They move the data bidirectionally, they bring in stateful security information, and they enable you to ignore the underlying APIs. That provides tons of time savings for you in the setup and programming of the system, and more savings associated with the maintenance of those interfaces over time. That's why enterprise application integration is so expensive up front and long term, because the integration requires constant maintenance and constant visibility, whereas data integration using advanced data virtualization just has a much lighter touch and a much lower cost of ongoing support. You can do integration in the cloud with data virtualization. You can extend down to the enterprise. Those security issues have been resolved, so there's no black magic there anymore. It's very straightforward. The conversation that we don't want to have with your security officer is why we're doing something differently. The conversation we will have is we absolutely support your native LDAP permissions, and the access through our system to any and all data can be governed by your existing standard security model. And if you use something like LDAP, we're 100% supporting that model for deployment. That's what your security officer wants to hear. That's how you run your enterprise, and that's how we do it. Nothing new in the world of security. We implement what you've already got. How can you configure on-premise? It's very easy. You can bring two sources together to start, get your ETL team hands-on with data virtualization, and then you can scale up to multiple sources. You can go to 3, 4, multiple instances, and this is exactly what becomes cumbersome, difficult, and risk-laden when you do this with ETL. This is exactly what makes master data management projects so difficult and so time-consuming and so prone to failure, is these custom ETL integrations you have to ring around a hub. Forget it. All of that's gone with advanced data virtualization. In deployment, you might see for customer information management scenarios that look like this. Perhaps you're migrating data from Vantiv, you're doing data enrichment from Axiom or Dun & Bradstreet, and these are the kinds of environments that we support all the time. You can look at our case studies on our website and learn more about it. Product information management also is very popular. Sometimes people don't think they're aligning master data. They say, well, look, I'm just aligning my catalog across 3 applications. If you're an SMB company, that's how you think. If you're a global enterprise, you call it master data management. We support both ends of that spectrum right through the middle and make it easy for you to do that deployment any way you need to structure it. So in summary, the Virtual Data Manager, or QCloud, reaches into the data securely through our application software blades, exposes the structure, uses the security information to parcel out access permissions, and then when a record of truth changes, automatically propagates that record of truth back to the original sources so that the data harmonization is done. This can be done for data integration, or we can arrange a one-way trip, data migration, to pull data into the warehouse so that you can pound it with your BI systems. Data virtualization is easy, it's fast, it's highly automated, it's done at a lower risk level, and it's done with a far greater speed of deployment. In terms of vision for where this goes, it's your broad enterprise. It's one dashboard view to a global enterprise where you can see the state of all your integrations, the implementation of your governance rules, the state of your quality present and past, the state of your compliance, the ability to see these white box rules and to reach in and audit, and the performance of all these nodes, both past and present. It's a very different paradigm. It's what's been missing from data integration for a long time, and it's what we're going to bring you with our NGen product in the very short term. Think of different instances and the problems you have with master data management. The problem with master data management is that it's designed for a single domain. A hub is a single domain entity, and all those connections are hand-coded ETL. Yet master data in most companies is not single domain. You've got master data at the very top, and then the European group has a different and a subset of that, and the US group has a different subset, and then products versus vendors may be segmented differently, and you end up with multiple systems, isolated, not connected, and all this manual process to deploy this. Virtual master data management changes everything using advanced data virtualization technology to let you build data virtualization based MDM from the ground up, not from the top down, and propagate that data with light speed into your source operational systems. It will work better at lower cost and with better performance than legacy MDM systems. And when we bring a lot of the pilots to public visibility over the short term, you're going to see firsthand how this technology is going to change the state of master data management. So, all of these changes are coming. All of these things will be there in the market for you. What do you need to make it work? Well, you still need data quality in the right doses. You still need data governance. And the biggest issue that I've had is that data governance talks a great story, has lots of meetings, but for an important technology or an important set of guidance, has almost no automation in the market to support it. Virtual master data management builds in the automation tool set to enable data governance to be articulated as a set of business rules. And you'll see as we bring virtual master data management to market how this will change your ability to deploy data governance and to see how these rules implement at a high level and move data between your various business entities. It's a very, very important piece of technology that's been missing, and I think this will empower data governance in a way that has not been empowered so far. If you really wanted to look at data virtualization versus legacy ETL, there are 13 points which I will not go through now, but you can see them and get a sense of them. There's another video available without registration on the Qplix website that just covers these 13 points, and it's worth seeing. But fundamentally, ETL is a legacy technology. It's well suited for moving files in bulk. It's great for the early data warehouse, but it is not the tool of choice today for multi-point integration. It will never support virtual master data management, and ultimately it's being displaced by newer integrations that are driven by the movement to the cloud. So you need to start thinking about options and where you're going to go and what you're going to do differently, because ETL has come to the end of its lifetime and the end of its rope. In terms of architecture, I think the only reason to put this up is to note that data quality is part of data integration. The engine's right there, and security is much stronger than anything you'd find with an ETL-like tool. ETL is a pipe. It's assumed when you connect it to two apps that you have the permission to be doing that, and once that pipe is connected, the water flows, right? It's assumed that anyone on either end should be there. So the security you get is about preserving the integrity of the pipe. It's encryption in flight, but it's not about who can get in on either end. By tying to things like LDAP, every user on our system can be permissioned solely and uniquely by their LDAP permissions to see no more nor less than they are permissioned to see when they're in the source systems. And when you have a lot of people in IT and different business units touching a lot of different systems, you can run into many compliance issues. We try to support these things with data masking and everything else, but in the final analysis, you've got to manage it from your core LDAP permissions, and we have that today. No other data integration technology at the record level supports a multi-point connected data integration solution with that kind of security, except for some of the manually programmed MDM hubs at the very high end. And it's much harder to set up when you do it at that end, and it is a proprietary permission system set up through the MDM software. We are leveraging LDAP to do what needs to be done, so it should be easier for you to implement and more compliant overall for your organization if you haven't done something like MDM before. So once again, vision for the future, one dashboard. We hope that you see advanced data virtualization versus the legacy technologies as something you'll want to learn more about. We're excited about it. Please come and visit us, talk to us. We have a webinar a week between now and Thanksgiving, and many free videos, much shorter, on our website. Come check them out and learn about data virtualization and how it can benefit you. Thank you and have a great day. Bye-bye.